We're not afraid to ask the hard questions, or should I say ruthless questions. There's a huge problem with Path of Exile 2 right now, and it's not with the game. It's of what I think might just happen to it because of a ridiculous number of complaints flowing in about it right now across the internet. I hope Grinding Gear Games does not listen to most of them, despite early access of course being designed to be fluid and fix major problems with the game. This is basically a beta. Path of Exile 2 has some things that could be better, but the direction and vision of the game is what some are trying desperately to change. And it shouldn't. Welcome to Path of Exile 2, everyone. The game is out, people are playing it, massive numbers of people, and reception by many informed on what the game was supposed to be and currently is, as expected, is stellar. This is a poll of viewers of this channel, a channel built around Path of Exile 2. People are in love. This right here is a Twitter poll, once again, of people who were very well informed about Path of Exile 2. This is the face of a dude who's very hyped to play Path of Exile 2 and is loving it. Yeah, it's me. And these are the words of my wife who just downed the Act 1 end boss after an hour and a half of attempting it. Yes, my heart is pumping. Yes! Need I say more? Lots of players love it, but some players hate Path of Exile 2. Specifically a certain sect of players who are always vocal about Path of Exile. The largest Path of Exile community out there, bar none, except the people who actually play the game, the Path of Exile subreddit. This video breaks down their qualms piece by piece, then expresses why I hope Grinding Gear Games does not submit to the majority of these complaints and stands firm with the bulk of their decisions about Path of Exile 2, which is a completely different game compared to Path of Exile 1. Talkative try here, make sure you like the video if you end up liking it and to subscribe to the channel. Both are completely free and the best ways to support the channel's growth. It has been going very well the past little while. I want to keep pumping up those numbers. I have 8 Reddit threads here from the Path of Exile subreddit that I would like to discuss today. We're going to look at their concerns, we're going to address them, and then I am going to finally argue why I disagree with all of these. The first is just a meme. Grinding Gear Games, where's the loot? It's not in abundance like Path of Exile 1, especially in the early game. This is by design. They want items to matter. They want crafting materials to be used on items. They want shops to matter. Lots of people probably aren't checking the vendors because they are treating this game like Path of Exile 1. What you're supposed to do is pick up an item, maybe magic, maybe a base white item, and then craft on it using crafting orbs. Now, some people are saying, hey, we're not getting enough currency drops. Maybe these need to be upped. That might be the case. I haven't had a problem because I'm picking up rare items and magic items and I'm disenchanting them in the town and I am getting lots of shards from these to create orbs. I don't know if everybody's doing that. I don't know if it's that well explained in the game itself. It's hidden behind one of the NPCs, and you're only going to see that if you read the NPC's dialogue or options, or if you just know about it by word of mouth. There's no tutorial in game to do this. So maybe this is something Grinding Gear Games could encourage players to do, because maybe these people who don't understand, okay, the loot is meant to be used, the loot is meant to not be in abundance, you're supposed to use these many different avenues and not just get stuff from monsters. They're wondering, where the heck are the items? That could fix it, Grinding Gear Games. Additionally, I don't think the game needs a better loot filter, but I think it needs a better loot highlighter. I am unaware why Grinding Gear Games does not put in certain bases or certain items getting highlighted. Only uniques get that little bar of light upon them. I think that special currency items like exalted orbs and like jeweler's orbs now should have some sort of highlight or sound effect to them dropping as well. Not every single item needs to have a sound effect like a never sing filter, but some of them should as a default. The next up is yet another meme talking about the new Ascension process, in particular the Trial of the Sekimas and the Trial of Chaos. People do not like them compared to the Labyrinth. They are more in-depth than the Labyrinth, they are more fun than the Labyrinth, and yes, they are more engaging and challenging than the Labyrinth. Sure, the Labyrinth was very annoying to a lot of people. They didn't like going through this layout and traps and fighting Azaro league after league, time after time. Well, now they invested a lot into these 2 new Ascension types with a third on the way during early access, and they've become entire endgame systems, and they are very well developed. And people don't like that you have to spend a lot of time in, and there is a chance of failure. The Labyrinth, for all of the annoyances about it, was pretty darn easy. The Trial of the Sekimas, when you first encounter it in Path of Exile 2, is difficult. It engages you when you play, and people, once again, don't necessarily like that. It goes back to the first post about gear and you needing to engage with the gear that actually drops and not just, oh, okay, bunch of gear drops. I'm going to pick up this. One of them's bound to be good. No, you have to pay attention to the individual gear drops. Every item matters as long as it's an item that you really can use on your class. Remember, there's no smart loot. So you're looking for items that work well for your class mostly, unless you're trading. But I don't think a lot of people are trading right now. I haven't traded yet. Let me know in the comments. Have you even used trade at all? I've just been playing the game and having a blast. Anyway, back to this. People miss Azaro because now these 2 trials are very deep, very engaging, and I think very well designed because they just want to get the ascendancies. They just want to get more powerful with not a lot of input in. That's what I'm gauging from all the comments, from these memes that are arising. People just want their rewards, and they want them fast, and they want them easily. This commenter right here is bringing up probably the only valid point, I think, with the Trial of the Sekimas. The thing is, basically all builds work for labs. It's a soft stat and skill check that is a nice break from the campaign. I didn't enjoy it for the 10,000th time, but it did what it set out to do. Build consistency for Sanctum is all over the place. I think it would be better if they just removed Honor, but regardless, it is certainly a weird decision to bring Sanctum back into PoE2 with such minimal changes on what made it unpopular. You get more Honor from your defenses. If you dodge, if you play strategically during this, you are going to make it to the end. If you aren't paying attention, you definitely are not going to make it to the end, and you are going to lose all of your honor. However, for certain builds, it is definitely harder. If you're melee, it is much harder than if you are ranged. But hopefully, because of the way it scales with evasion rating and armor giving more to your honor, hopefully that could work itself out. I'm wondering if they should give more honor to people who are wielding armor, because that's typically melee, stacking armor. I'm not too sure how they could solve that and make it so that melee isn't more difficult to get through the Trial of the Sekimas. Maybe ultimatum, ranged is worse, melee's better. Not sure about that. Haven't even made it into the Trial of Chaos. I'm about to hop in, but there are lots of people that are complaining about the Trials of Ascension and how, again, challenging they are. And they're not like the lab, which was a menial task. Okay, and this one I've barely read. I just have to include it in here. I'm not in Endgame yet. I've seen no Endgame footage. This is the only Reddit thread I've opened about Endgame, and I just read the bullet points. This person says the Endgame is awful because of the crafting, because there's none in the game. Losing maps on death is bad because the mobs are too hard. Loot, way too little. Balancing is out of whack, and gearing is brutally hard. So, what are we seeing a lot of here? They are not getting satisfaction quickly. Once again, this harkens back to the fact that Path of Exile 1 players are expecting a solved game. They are expecting Path of Exile 1, which we have been playing for over a decade now in Path of Exile 2. They're expecting to be able to blast through maps, blast through the campaign, beat all the bosses, gear their characters, be able to understand all the different facets and systems of the game right now, including crafting and loot and the balance. And that's not the case. Sure, there's lots of fine-tuning that has to be done by grinding your games, but I am pretty darn sure a lot of this game is in a very good place. Early access is for exactly this, the fine-tuning, but the general brushes and swaths are great. Lots of people are making massive exaggerations saying there's just zero loot, there's zero items, nothing, you're not getting anything. I haven't experienced that. I'm in Act 3 and I'm getting upgrades constantly. I'm using crafting orbs constantly and it feels good. The progression feels great. My wife loves that there's not loot all over your screen like in Path of Exile 1. She's progressing through the game. My brother-in-law, the same. My dad, the same. My brother, the same. They all vastly enjoy this experience compared to Path of Exile 1. And a big part of it is the fact that there's not loot blasting all over your screen and the items you pick up and interact with actually matter. They didn't in Path of Exile 1 for the most part. Remember, Grinding Your Game said they didn't want a loot filter to be necessary. I hope they stand firm on this decision. I do hope that we do see in the endgame higher tier items dropping. I don't see a lot talked about that in this thread here. Once again, I haven't participated in endgame, but it seems like a lot of people might be blowing this out of proportion literally 3 days into the early access. Okay, here's one that actually a lot of people, including content creators, agree with Reddit on. Being blocked by monsters is hideous, not fun, and not a good mechanic. I disagree readily. The entirety of Path of Exile 2, it revolves around the fact you cannot just easily phase through monsters. With investment, there do appear to be some avenues to phase, but by default, you can't dodge roll through monsters. You need to kill the monsters. This is vital to the way the game is designed, and if they add something like phasing to the game, if they add anything of that sort, I think it will change the experience that people are currently having. If they add phasing, you can just dodge roll past stuff, zerg past, run fast. Easy. Avoid all the monsters. People are saying they keep getting surrounded by all the monsters and dying and they can't escape. That doesn't happen unless you make a tactical error. This is not Path of Exile 1. They do not expect you to just form a train of monsters in a map and then blast them all down instantly. You can do that, but that is not the base experience. To do that, you have to design a character that is capable of doing that. With Falling Thunder on my monk, I can do that sometimes if I get a perfect scenario going. However, I can't do that all the time. And these players who are zerging past stuff, getting massive groups, and then getting surrounded, it's their fault. The game is designed to punish you if you do that. So I don't see Grinding Your Games switching this, but man, lots of people like Havoc, lots of people are complaining about this. There is a possibility they do change this, and I think it would completely change the feel of combat in the game for the worse. Next up, respec costs are way too high. Why am I being punished for trying out things? This is particularly talking about passive skill tree point respecs. They're saying the costs are too high, even in early games, some of the commenters. Once again, I haven't experienced this. I've respected my characters quite a few times now, and I haven't thought they're too high. Really, if you want to invest in completely respeccing your character, it's going to cost you something. There has to be a weight to this. They don't want you to just completely be able to change your character at will. You're going to be making a lot of gold at some point. If you're picking up items, if you're selling them, again, I think this feeds into the fact that people aren't doing that. I don't think people are playing the game as it was designed to be played. I think people are playing the game like Path of Exile 1. They're not picking up loot, they're running past everything, and they're running into the fact that, oh my gosh, I need to respec now, and I don't have enough gold. I have around 40,000 gold right now, and I'm level 40. And this person is saying he's level 51, it's 2k gold per respec point. You start getting exponentially more gold the higher level that you get. And this cost should scale with that. They don't want it to be free, and I agree with that as well. But a lot of people are pissed that they can't just snap their fingers and change their build. Right now, you can do that with gems. That's cool. But stuff like the passive skill tree, that is more permanent. They've given us a lot of freedom with support gems and skill gems. I think that is a good amount of freedom. Passive skill tree, being able to just completely revamp that, not the way to go. Then there's this Reddit post that is comparing Path of Exile 2 to Lake of Kalandra, one of the most infamous leagues in all of Path of Exile history, mostly for how the Path of Exile subreddit reacted to it and basically chased Grinding Your Games out of speaking with the community. This person's ranting. This person is saying 50% of the player base left Kalandra very quickly. The same is probably going to happen to Path of Exile 2. In Path of Exile 2, there's just new visuals. There's not a lot of new mechanics actually there. The leagues are rehashed, and the balance is bad. People are seriously choking themselves. Everyone. I have comments talking about how Path of Exile 2 is just like Overwatch 2. I don't understand how this is happening. It has to be a defensive mechanism. This is such a different game. I don't think these people were informed that Path of Exile 2 was going to be separate from Path of Exile 1. I'm wondering if there's some remnants left over from 2019 where people thought that, oh, Path of Exile 2 is just a sequel to Path of Exile 1, making the systems we know and love, the gameplay we know and love from Path of Exile 1 better. New animations, new visuals, some new gameplay, new acts, and that's it. Because that's how a lot of the people on Reddit are reacting. And these voices are just being magnified higher and higher and higher. And it's really scaring me. Really, really, really scaring me, everyone. And then this thread right here summarizes most Path of Exile 1 players' complaints about Path of Exile 2 very succinctly. It's not the difficulty. Stop repeating this. They reiterate that it's not enough loot dropping, grinding your games wasting the player's time, and the dodge roll not having phasing. I'd like to focus on the second point as we've already talked about points 1 and 3. The second point, wasting the player's time. I legit spent more time in a single zone in Act 3 than I would have spent in an entire act in PoE 1, and a huge amount of that time was extremely boring and unnecessary. Obviously, this has nothing to do with difficulty. Players don't know Path of Exile 2. It's a brand new game. Remember back to the first time you played Path of Exile 1. Did you do it as fast as you do Path of Exile 1 now, after playing the campaign over and over and over again? Or are you doing it at about the same pace? For example, I am replaying through Path of Exile 2's campaign offline. Max volume, music high, just taking it all in on a warrior. I did Act 1 in about a sixth of the time that I did it on my first playthrough. It took about, I think, an hour to finish Act 1 on my warrior. And that was the second time I played Act 1. I think the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, the sixth time, it's just going to get faster. You're going to understand the layouts. You're going to know which bosses to kill. You're going to know what the monsters do. You're going to know how to obtain items in the proper way because everything has changed. The item system has changed. The skill system, the way enemies interact with you, they all changed. The game is far more engaging. It's not Path of Exile 1. People need to wipe that from their minds. This is a brand new game. You're going to learn it. You're not going to be able to run through Path of Exile 2 as fast as you are with Path of Exile 1. It's just not happening right now. Over time, maybe, but still the game is going to be engaging. I don't think the right word here is difficult. Path of Exile 2 is engaging, and that's difficult for some people. And then many others love it. And then I just had to include this in here because maybe it kind of gave away the whole ball game. The last one is me right now, playing PoE2, watching a streamer play PoE2, not touching the game and simply enjoying memes about PoE2. I think a lot of people on the Path of Exile subreddit, maybe they're not even touching PoE2. Maybe they touched it for a bit and now they're just on there raging about the game, and the people enjoying the game, well, they are a part of this Steam graph right here, and the PS5 player base, and the Xbox player base, and the standalone client players, like myself. So where do we go from here? I hope Grinding Your Games does not listen to the feedback about changing the entire vision of Path of Exile 2. The game is meant to be engaging. Loot is meant to be meaningful. You're not supposed to zerg through levels super fast on your first playthrough. And my goodness, people haven't even been in endgame for more than probably a day and a half at this point. I'm not too sure. And people are already saying the endgame loot sucks and is terrible. We need to give it a little bit more time until we say that, right? A little bit more hands-on experience with it. I have kept myself pretty blind to the opinions of lots of other content creators. I've only looked at Reddit this one time and one other time to gather information. I've read people's Twitch chats, my own. I've read Twitter. So I don't really know what is going on. I don't know if this is a zeitgeist that is just wrapping up about Path of Exile 2 and its poor reception from Path of Exile 1 players. It seems everyone in my comments really loves the game. There's some tuning that has to be done. I've mentioned some areas seem way out of whack. I also think that there can be some work done on maps, giving them more checkpoints instead of like the Dreadnought map just being a super long map with no checkpoints, and if you die, you gotta fight through everything once more. I think there should be loot highlighting in the game for special items and not just uniques. I think people in Melee should have some sort of bonus to honor in some form or fashion in the Trial of the Sekimas. I think that the map UI on whether or not you've killed a boss should be changed a little bit, because right now the faded gray is not clear to a lot of people. Just put an X on the skull. In grinding your games, please allow me to walk away from environmental lore objects when I click on them and read them. Right now, you can't, and it makes me so sad. And at this point, those are my critiques of Path of Exile 2. Like I said, I'm only in Act 3. I am taking my time. I am enjoying this as a brand new game. You only get that brand new game smell and taste once. I'm really taking it in. I'm playing multiple characters. I'm in Act 3. I'm going to progress through the ruthless difficulty and into the end game. Maybe my opinions will change. Maybe. It's very possible. But I do hope that grinding your game sticks to their vision and does not bend to the mob, even though this is early access, even though this is a beta of sorts, and they will be making lots of changes. There's so much more coming to Path of Exile 2 in the coming weeks and months. We've got 6 more classes, we've got 3 more acts, we've got more end game. The game is just starting out, truly. And I hope that they are able to see out all this content added in their vision of the game that is so darn fun to many of us. Well, what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And make sure, if you liked the video, hit the like button now and to subscribe to the channel for more Path of Exile 2 content in the future. I will see you in the next video. Stay sane, my fellow exiles.